Okay, everyone. Steve Blackmon of People Pattern.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here, for coming to the conference, and for leaving lunch early to come see my talk. I am VP of Technology at People Pattern and CTO of Blue Squad. I'll talk a little bit about both of those things. But I'm also, importantly for here, the PMC chair of Apache Streams, which is a project that I think is very cool. Hopefully you will too, after I give you a little bit of background on it. So Apache Streams began incubating, I think in 2012 or 2013. Graduated about 3 years later. When Apache Streams was first created, there was an effort that had recently begun among a lot of companies and organizations, and you can look this up at your own time, called activity streams. And the idea was to create a vocabulary for online digital information about profiles and posts. Social networking was kind of nascent, but there was a proliferation of new tools. APIs were just beginning to be built around all of those services, and yet there was no common way to express those concepts. And so Activity Stream said, hey, we'll take a shot at describing how that might work, and did. And Apache Streams was built to provide basically kind of a reference implementation built in Java that you could use to create systems that would pass data around with activity streams. We found quickly that one of the main important things was that there's a lot of data in various specific places that have their own formats and their own APIs, and then we could provide basically a binding that said, if you're interested in getting data from the Twitter fire hose, or from your YouTube channel, or from your Instagram page, then the way that you do that and then convert that data into a normalized activity streams format is follow this recipe. So a good amount of code was built and pushed into Apache Streams that would support basically getting and pushing data from JSON APIs, but doing so using a canonical description of a profile, a page, a post, a user, a group, etc. Fast forward a little bit, Activity Streams went through the W3C social working group and is now taught like a W3C standard that says basically this is the W3C's one of their official ways of expressing this sort of information on the web, and it is now basically has been refactored such that it is based on the RDF OWL linked data ecosystem with support for JSON LD. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying that it's not just JSON documents. There's the idea that the global namespace and ontology of a particular setting, a particular network can live in a place. You can always go there to find out what sort of data is expressed inside of the contents that you might get from that API. And so Apache Streams has now been working on adapting and upgrading our code to be compatible with this new Activity Streams 2.0 format, which now that that underlying tech is based on RDF OWL opens up a lot of cool things that can be done to deal with this data as graph data, not just as document data. Because at its core, it really is graph data. I'm going to walk through what some of those things are. But the website is streams.apache.org. If you want to learn more, please join the mailing list. If anything that I say here is interesting, I'll stop for questions at a couple points, and then by all means, talk to me this afternoon as well. So we're, like most Apache projects, we're posting on GitHub, and if you want to kind of see some of what Apache Streams has to offer, a lot of the good stuff is in this Streams contrib folder, wherein you'll see the various bindings that we built for different backend databases and for different, what we call providers, which is upstream places that you can pull data into the Streams format. You can see, right, we have some kind of support for Facebook, for Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, RSS feeds, Twitter, YouTube. And at this point, adding a new one of these is a fairly straightforward exercise, and I'll kind of show you kind of what is involved during this discussion. But in general, anywhere that you can either get data from an API in a predictable format and then turn it into the canonical format, or download a zip file full of stuff from Twitter or Facebook or fill in the blank. This is much more common now that there are legal data portability requirements coming into force. So big companies are saying individual users can come get some or all of their data, and we'll give them a way to do that. It's not always easy. We can't always program to it the way that you could with an API. And yet being able to take the contact list that you've accumulated inside of a service and be able to get access to the raw data, I think is a very valuable thing. And I think we'll begin to see an ecosystem of innovation that's based on those exports and reusing them in creative ways begin to grow as more and more of the internet kind of shifts into a model where data portability is not only an afterthought. So what's the point of doing any of this? Well, I'll show you some parts of the people pattern to kind of give you a sense for what we do with this. So at people pattern, we are an audience intelligence company, and we seek to make public data around consumers actionable for marketers. And kind of a common thing that you might want to do is find people who live in a particular city, or find an influencer who's from that city in order to put out a campaign. So if you go to the Twitter API, they have a location field, but it's a string. You don't actually, you have to kind of interpret it. People Pattern has built machine learning classifiers that look across the various fields on Twitter profiles and turn them into true structured data with predictions based on whatever information we're able to see about the profile. That might include where they live, what gender they are, and what their interests are. So this lets us do interesting things like search across a database for a particular topic. Type in Apache, why not? And so we know right off there are 7,500 portraits that have Apache in the title of their Twitter profile. We can here break down what their different interests are, male versus female, what age they are, this sort of stuff. And this is all pretty turnkey, and we have agency and brand clients who use this application to go try to find an audience so that they can then reach out to them with promoted messaging or with direct messaging. Where Apache Streams kind of comes into this is the actual normalization of data from across networks, which is what we do. We take multiple profiles, merge them into a portrait, and then take the posts from all of them and analyze them together in order to support these sorts of applications. Here, I'm trying to say I want to build a feed of specific data, and some of the options that are presented. You can pull in profiles that follow a specific account, that have engaged with a specific account, that have mentioned specific keywords and hashtags. See, these channel logos basically reflect the different channels where that specific type of search is supported. But now it's no longer incumbent on the user who's trying to collect this data to understand how to go ask for it, how to normalize it, how to index it, or how to use it. The application takes care of all of that. And it's this concept of the data may come from a variety of formats and from a variety of shapes. None of that really should be the concern of the end user that Apache Streams drives. So many of these same sorts of ways to go obtain data are also supported in the Streams code base. And reading the documentation and working with people on the list, you can find what's the appropriate Java class that I run to go obtain that data and spit it out in a normalized format. Having then kind of assembled a pool of information, we index it in such a way that you can do Lucene search across any part of the document. Then we also provide essentially facets around these different items to let you drill in and provide segmentation on the audience that you either have or are trying to get. So you could drill in on a certain age bracket or several. You can drill in on specific cities. And again, all of this stuff kind of live updates. And you can look at the individual most influential accounts and then consider them for some kind of activation program. So this is the ad tech track. This is pretty kind of standard ad tech stuff. What I'm real interested in want to talk about just now is the social graph data for individuals and for ad hoc groups. So as I mentioned, Activity Streams 2.0 has been officially released, and our code base is now providing support for Activity Streams 2.0 based on RDF OWL link data, which is very cool. And so some of these contributed modules have a section called experimental features that will basically walk you through, if you're interested, what Java class you run on top of a zip file that you downloaded from Twitter in order to turn it into triples that you can then work with in your own database. And this is currently supported on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+. So if you already downloaded your Google+ data, good for you. Otherwise, I think it's gone by now. And YouTube and more to come. So what's the point of doing this? Well, I'll show you. Essentially, having basically downloaded all these zip files, just show you like kind of a sample of what the data like winds up looking like. So here is I'm hoping that you can open a zip file like this. Okay. So the file that you get if you go to Facebook and ask for your export has a bunch of folders in it and a bunch of JSON data in it, and some folders that have a bunch of pictures, right? So what can you do with this? Well, to be honest, there's really not anywhere that you can take this and immediately get value from it. Basically, they're just doing their obligation to conform with the legal requirement they have to provide data portability. And it's great that they do. But I think that the open source world can actually pitch in here and help these exports actually become useful to normal people and help data portability become a real thing as opposed to just an idea. And so the way that you do that is to use Apache Streams to then take this data, normalize it, and then build applications with it. My Twitter file is also a bunch of folders containing some JSON. Needs a little bit of pre-processing. My Google+, similar. But in order to actually use this, you have to basically become an expert in this particular export file, which, by the way, is subject to change at any time. And so if you export again next week, you might wind up with something very different. I think in practice, there is development happening on these projects. And every 3 to 4 months, it's not uncommon to like see some new data show up or even to see a major refactoring of what the export does. So in order to make this useful, open source can help, Apache Streams can help. And what Apache Streams then will do is you have then obtained your zip file, you've run this conversion job, and now you have one file containing all of the data that has been mapped from that export, and you have it in a standardized format. And here's an example of that. So this is the turtle file. Is anyone familiar with turtle or RDF? Okay, this one. So this is the turtle file that this process built, and it says, first of all, this is a Twitter profile. Here's the basic bio metadata. When I went into the profile.js file, here's what I found there. These prefixes basically describe what ontology this particular predicate comes from. So AS stands for activity streams. vCard, which maybe many of you may have heard of, is a standard going back quite a while for describing basically individual business contact type information. Right? And now here is all of the follows that were discovered inside of that file. If I go further down, now I start to see like, hey, here's all my tweets. Here's who was CC'd on each tweet. Here's my direct messages and so on. And all this stuff is sitting in that file, but it's not super useful in its data format. But here I have built the RDF triple store on my local machine, like the graph LegoGraph has a community edition that offers free usage up to repositories of 5 million triples, which is a lot. So now that I've got this data store, I can run any kind of query I want it, or I can run applications that know how to browse it. So LegoGraph comes with a web view, and I'll say view repository classes, and what this is saying here, I can type any query I want, but it also is letting me show me, here are the types of data that's in this repository. So if I'm interested in LinkedIn profiles, I can click through and see, hey, here are all the LinkedIn profiles that are in this repo. I can click through to them and see the individual details that were obtained from LinkedIn. And I can do this on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well. And whatever data can be mapped through and normalized from those stores, this code base can do that. So that's interesting. Now I have a database locally of all of my contacts across all my networks and all of my communications with those contacts. And I have free text search on it, and I have structured query on top of it. I'm going to pause here for a minute and ask if anyone has any questions before I get into the next stage, which is where it gets real. Okay, so the next stage is, if I can get this data on my own, and my friends can too, can we federate? And can we basically give each other access to parts of our database? Actually, yeah, you can do that too. So last year, me and some friends started a group called Blue Squad, and our goal is to help Democrats use data to win elections. And we all live in Central Texas, so we really focused there. We got a handful of campaigns to kind of support what we were trying to do. And we kind of reached out to the progressive ecosystem and said, hey, we're trying to build a tool that'll let progressives use their data to help campaigns win. And got about 100 people to sign up, and a lot of them to share data into this kind of data commons for a specific purpose. And we are working on forming a company around that, and I think it has a lot of potential. If you want to talk about that, I'd love to. But essentially, we gave people a place that they could come, log in, drag and drop files that belong to them or belong to a campaign they were volunteering from into basically a shared Dropbox. And then we built code behind it that would process all these files, figure out what they are, turn them into triples, and then load those triples into databases for each campaign, and then a commons that goes across campaigns. So basically, one of the ways that this is going to market is essentially the campaigns that are working with us have access to some SaaS tools that include search and visualization over the networks of all of their supporters. And so this is a tool called The Curious. It's commercial. It's not free. I'm sorry, but it's pretty cool. It's basically just looking at my local LegoGraph repo, and I can search to find a specific entity. Right? I found it. I see this is a I'm not sure what green is. But basically, these colors represent different types of data that are in there. And a lot of these are activity streams namespaced or vCard namespaced properties. We can do things like grab any two individuals and then say, show me the tightest path that connects these two. And then the graph will expand and show a network diagram how to connect. I can say I want to limit this exploration to the most connected neighbors, top 50, that are connected to this node. Right? And so it goes off, it blows up. All of these nodes have a little number next to them that show how many other nodes they have coming off of them. I'm guessing a lot of these are probably posts that this profile has in common with other profiles. And sure, then as you start to explore and expand iteratively across this graph, you can kind of start with one node, drill in, and then start to build a picture of whatever set of relationships it is that you think you can activate in order to get them to volunteer, get someone to come to an event, and ultimately to get people to turn out to vote in Texas, which is harder than it sounds. So I guess in conclusion, Apache Streams is trying to help solve a problem that is universal data interoperability and about data that a lot of people care very strongly about, and where the commercial interests that support that ecosystem are not very incented to actually do this. So that's a great opportunity for an open source project to try to help make that, to solve that in a way that can then be applied universally. And the more of our data that we can globally make interoperable by default, then the more innovation we can have and the better products and services and relationships we can all build from. So that's my talk. Thanks for coming. Does anyone like to ask a question while I'm holding the microphone?
So how do you put this example into action to get better turnout? Vehicles for use.
Okay. Well, one is that there are commercial kind of data enrichment sources that are widely used by marketing groups for consumer products companies and business-to-business companies, much less so used in politics. So some of those have Apache Streams modules that will allow you, like, show me all the phone numbers that I have in my data set. I'm going to now go find out additional information about them in order to make them more appropriate and useful for segmentation. So one service we're offering right now is that you can upload your data from your contact list and from your Facebook and from your LinkedIn and from your MailChimp, etc. And we build one unified contact list of all the different pieces of information that are in those files. And then we go to third-party sources, and for a fee, we can then add a bunch of columns to those rows. So we're helping you kind of build a master spreadsheet of all of the contacts of your campaign. And then adding a lot more insights about them. And then we have kind of a whole playbook that we go through with the campaign to help them figure out how to take that and use it to get more social media attention, or get more attention from the press, or run more events that are better attended. And there's just an entire journey from deciding that you want to run for office to kind of building your core network and then using your core network to go expand to get enough name recognition and positive IDs that you can ultimately win. We're hoping to approach this kind of like a science, in doing so in a community-based way where you, as someone who wants to help your friend run for office and then can basically opt your data into their effort while still retaining ultimate control over all the ways that it's used. So one thing that we like to say is your data is going to be weaponized against you by certain players. So you might as well have the chance to use it on your own in order to help inform your friends and make sure that they don't get caught up in disinformation. Yes?
There is a non-technical question, like why only screens? Like why project is named Streams?
The project is called Apache Streams because it was born as a reference implementation for activity streams, which is the primary effort to have one way to describe all of the social digital profiles and posts and everything that are all over the web.
Because when I look at when I just read the title, I don't like it is something to do with the screen processing.
This project actually predates a lot of those projects, basically taking the term streaming and using it to describe a paradigm shift from batch processing. But yeah, that is what that term has come to mean with Apache particularly. Yeah, we're not going to change it now. We don't understand. But if this project, continues to evolve and grow to where I would like to see it grow, then we can essentially use open source to build tools that allow people to recapture data by them and about them from various places into their own data sets. So you're not captive to, if I want to interact with my WhatsApp data, I have to go into WhatsApp. If I want to interact with my Instagram data, I have to go into Instagram. And I'm limited by the features and connectivity that they are willing to spend time giving me. You can just get that data and bring it into your own pool, and you can work with it as you see fit.
And there are many efforts to go together with that. I would have my profile consistent process of your platforms to normalize that.
So the question is, how about like the other angle of how to make a post and then cross-post it? Most of the code you would need to do that is already in Apache Streams. It hasn't really been something that I think we focused on. So we've mostly focused on being a consumer. But for example, the Twitter SDK that's part of the Twitter module of Apache Streams could be altered within a day or so to provide two-way. And then you could basically just convert the post from the normalized form back into the Twitter form and then push it out. And that would be that's been on our roadmap for quite a while. So anyone who wants to help work on that, please talk to me. Yeah, to that point, in order to get to your own kind of control panel, it needs to be read-write, not just read. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for coming.